Hello, my name is Brianna and welcome to my presentation on MDMA. MDMA commonly refers to methylendioxymethamphetamine, and a bit of history on MDMA is that it was first synthesized in Germany in 1912 by complete accident. A pharmaceutical company known as Merck accidentally made MDMA even though they were trying to create a drug to help stop bleeding. About 40 years later, the U.S. Army researched similar chemical structures and were trying to develop truth drugs to use in interrogations. Common street names that MDMA are known as are ecstasy, E, X, Atom, love drug, or most recently Molly. Lastly, this drug is commonly used often at raves or other dances or festivals. This drug is used illicitly and recreationally and is under Schedule 1 due to no recognition of medicinal use and high abuse potential. Next, we will touch on the pharmacokinetics of MDMA. Commonly, people take MDMA orally through tablets. Plasma levels peak at 1 to 2 hours after drug administration. MDMA is absorbed through the intestinal tract. No information could be found for if MDMA depot binds after being administered. The half-life of the drug is found to be around 8 to 9 hours, which means MDMA needs 40 hours to pass before 95% of MDMA have been cleared from the body. MDMA is metabolized by the CYP2D6 enzyme and goes through the first-pass metabolism through the liver. Lastly, MDMA is cleared and excreted through urine. In order to understand the mechanism of action of MDMA, it is important to understand what can happen as a result of taking MDMA. When taking MDMA, there are positive and negative effects. The behavioral effects of MDMA are very similar to stimulants and hallucinogens. For example, it is common to see alertness and a heightened arousal in MDMA users. Additionally, MDMA produces major pro-social effects like feeling empathy towards others, having an increase of closeness with others, trust in others, and openness increases. Finally, people report a more positive mood or greater levels of euphoria when under the influence of MDMA. Cognitively, there is a reported enhanced perceptual awareness and information processing after taking MDMA. Some aversive physiological effects are nausea, headaches, increase in heart rate, teeth grinding, and tightening of the jaw muscles. Additionally, cognitively, acute impairment was found in immediate and delayed recall of a list of words. Finally, spatial memory was impaired, which includes the making and recovering of memories that have to do with location, context, along with orientation. Specifically, the physiological effects are going to be the most important to remember for later on. Now that we understand what types of effects MDMA has, we can now dive into the mechanism of action in depth. MDMA is associated with having an effect on serotonin cells. MDMA is an indirect agonist, which basically means that the drug does not specifically bind to the serotonin receptor. Instead, it affects the reuptake of serotonin by reversing the direction of reuptake. This increases levels of serotonin at the postsynaptic cell and increases the release of serotonin from the presynaptic cell. MDMA is also a strong releaser of the neurotransmitters dopamine and norepinephrine in addition to serotonin. For now, it is important to understand that this action leads to a buildup of serotonin within the synapse between the presynaptic and postsynaptic cell. Excessive release or buildup of serotonin leads to symptoms that are found in serotonin syndrome, which I will talk about next, and is linked with the mechanism of action. Serotonin syndrome is due to the excessive release of serotonin like mentioned previously. Symptoms of serotonin syndrome are severe agitation, disorientation or confusion, muscle spasms and shivering and chills, and lastly, increased heart rate. Many of these symptoms are elevated symptoms that moderate doses would produce, meaning people who experience the aversive physiological effects actually are experiencing a very mild form of serotonin syndrome that is not fatal. However, if the excessive release of serotonin continues due to either high doses of MDMA or someone mixes MDMA with another serotonergic drug, this could result in serotonin binding and creating serotonin syndrome. Our second to last topic for MDMA is chronic use and what does tolerance and withdrawal look like for MDMA. Tolerance that is built due to MDMA can be attributed to deficits in serotonin neurotransmission, reduced amount of serotonin transporters, and change in serotonin binding. Specifically, the possible depletion of serotonergic cells could play a role in chronic users' intolerance. From animal studies, there are long-lasting reductions in the brain of serotonin levels and serotonin binding. This can be portrayed in brain areas like the thalamus and hippocampus in heavy chronic MDMA users. No other information could be found in regards to acute, metabolic, or behavioral tolerance. Very similarly to other drugs we have discussed, withdrawal can be present in physical and psychological effects. However, psychological withdrawal symptoms might be the most present due to the big effect it has on emotions. Specifically, depression can be present in individuals who are withdrawing from MDMA due to a decrease in serotonin that we discussed in tolerance. Moving into the last section on MDMA, abuse potential is a bit complicated to discuss. Since MDMA is a stronger releaser of serotonin than dopamine, MDMA's abuse potential is not strong. Serotonin is found to be negatively correlated with reinforcing effects, and dopamine is found to be positively correlated with reinforcing effects. This would make the ratio higher for serotonin, making the drug less reinforcing even if MDMA does have an effect on dopamine. Due to the literature not being specific, dependence may not develop because the more often MDMA is used, the less pleasurable it becomes. Also, people may not have high dependence towards MDMA due to the serotonin presence and lower dopamine reinforcement. However, it is important to note that this drug does still interact with dopamine and can become reinforcing to some people. Some studies do associate MDMA having an increase in self-administration of the drug in animal studies. This can be thought the same in humans for those who do find the behavior of taking MDMA rewarding and reinforcing.